Hey guys, tonight we enter the quiet, misty corridors of a mountain temple in medieval Japan. It's late, the kind of that makes the crickets sound like background music and your breath puff into the lantern minus lit. You're standing in front of a wooden gate older than your hometown. And in a few minutes, you're going to voluntarily give up sleep. For weeks, maybe months, maybe longer. This is not a retreat. It's a discipline, a path, a decision so sincere it doesn't even try to be dramatic. You've heard stories some monks went blind for meditation. Others saw visions of light. One supposedly spoke in poetry for 3 years straight. None of them, as far as you can tell, had what you call a regular bed. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop a comment below. Tell me your city and what time you're listening to this. I always picture our sleepy little map lighting up across. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight. The night air smells like pine needles and burned incense. You step through the temple gate, and the world gets quieter in a way that feels physical, like someone just turned down the volume on reality. Your straw sandals crunch softly against grab. A monk, maybe 20 years older than you, bows with a barely minus. He says no need. You're shown to a small wooden room. One window, no bed, just a square of tatami mat, a round cushion, a water basin, and somewhat menacingly a wooden bucket. Tonight, says the head monk later, you begin the path of continual wakefulness. He says it as describing brushing your teeth. You try to nod respectfully, but your inner monologue is having an existential tantrum. No sleep? At all? Apparently not. This isn't a punishment, it's a spiritual practice. A training of the mind to transcend the desires of the body. According to the Rinzis and tradition, sleep is just another illusion. And illusions? In a monastery, of course, they don't expect you to succeed immediately. That would be suspicious. Instead, they give you tools, routines, rhythms, bells. So many bells. One rings at M to tell you, another at 5 for Zazen, another at 7 for sweeping the garden. Your day becomes a series of finely timed awakenings, which is ironic because you never went to sleep in the first place. You'll learn that time here is measured less by clocks than by sound. The hollow T-hunk of a wooden block, the swish of robes in the corridor, the occasional yawn strictly suppressed. And you won't be alone. Around you are novices just like you, their eyelids fluttering like moths. One is already nodding, his head bouncing with the rhythm of someone pretending. A chi as deep in. A senior monk walks past and taps his shoulder with a small stick not unkindly. But as a reminder, attention is the new form of rest. There's a strange comfort in it all. Yes, your legs are already sore. Yes, your body is screaming for a fudan, but your mind, your very tired mind, has entered a zone where thoughts move more slowly, more deliberately. A scholar once wrote that sleep isn't about denial, but redirection, that instead of closing your eyes, you're learning how to see different, whether that's poetic or just a fancy excuse for insomnia. No one can say for sure. Academic debates about this persist, though frankly most of the scholars arguing about it have never missed more than 2 nights of sleep in their life. As you sit in silence, moonlight falling like milk across the tatami floor, a thought emerges. What if sleep was? That's when the bell rings again. Time to chant. Again, the temple doesn't have a map, not one you can unfold anyway. But as you walk through its grounds over the next few days, you start to realize something. The place is a kind of mental architect, a spiritual diagram disguised as a collection of wooden buildings, gravel paths, and mossy corners. you notice how everything's 3 steps between the bell in the meditation hall, 3 bubbling s before meal, 3 times the incense stick is. It's subtle, but everywhere. At first, you think it's just tradition, or maybe some kind of ancient but then a monk, noticing your lost expression, leans in and whispers, "It's not decoration, it's instruction. Every courtyard is a metaphor. Every door leads somewhere inside your head. The kitchen, for example, isn't just where rice gets boiled to the consistency of warm glue. It's the realm of earth where humility and service are practiced by chopping root vegetables into perfect little cubes. The garden, that's wind, change, impermanence. And the meditation hall, that's fire of court, inner combustion, transformation, hopefully not literal combustion. Although the candles do get a little aggressive during winds, the temple doesn't separate spiritual work from physical space, it marries them. Your surroundings become a kind of moving scripture. One that you don't treat with your eyes, but with your feet, your breath. Your back as it straightens under the weight of it. Even the paths have meanings. There's the path of stillness, which winds in a circle around a dry rock garden. Designed so you walk it slowly, breathing in rhythm with you. There's also the path of water, leading past the stream where monks wash their faces before dawn. Legend says that if you stand still there long enough, you can hear the sound of old teachings carried in or maybe it's just frogs. The frogs are loud here. And then there's your favorite spot, a small, slightly lopsided gate tucked behind the main hall. No one ever seems to use it. You find yourself pausing there, not to escape, but to breathe, to feel and notice. One night, while sweeping fallen pine needles in near minus total darkness, a thought drifts into your mind. This place is teaching you how to walk, not just where, but how. Every footstep is a chance to pay attention, to align, to stop tripping over the metaphorical rocks of your own impatience. Historians have long debated whether this symbolic design was intentional or just a coincidence of architectural trends and Buddhist metaphor. Some say the geometry of temples is a reflection of cosmology. Others insist monks just like symmetry. No one agreed. That's how you know it's probably both. You stop in front of a statue of Kinhin, the Bodhisattva of compassion. Someone has placed a fresh persimmon in front of her, already starting to wrinkle. You smile, even offerings age here. So do you a little, but in a quiet way, like stones softening under rain. Let's talk about your first official lesson. It starts with a bell, of course. It doesn't a phrase that's delivered so calmly it almost sounds like a compliment. Don't sleep, that's it. No dramatic flourish, no young grasshopper. You must just to word, delivered like a grocery list item. Don't sleep. You sit with your legs crossed in the zendo, the main meditation hall, your back trying its best to resemble a straight line. Around you are other novices, all doing varying impressions of serenity. One's already blinking a little too slow. Another is biting the inside of their cheek. A third is leaning into that dangerously comfy slouch. You're pretty sure one guy is meditating so hard he is actually dreaming. But you're determined. You're going to stay awake. That's the assignment after all. Enlightenment through wakafsanals, or more accurately, enlightenment through absolutely refusing to lie down and to take a nap. See, in the Kamakura period of Japan, where much of this is en tradition took root. Sleep was just rest. It was the enemy of clarity. Monks sought satori, or sudden awakening, and the idea was, how are you going to wake up spirit? So begins your first full day of YA's Eon night. Yuri told you may close your eyes if you must. But if your chin drops or your spine folds like laundry, you'll hear the polite but decisive thwack of the cowset. And let's be honest, It's more of a friendly zap to your nervous system than actual violence. One monk even thanks the stick after it hits him. Reminds me you try to smile too. It comes out like a grimace in denial. You find yourself thinking things like, if I just blink very, very slowly, does that count as rest? You start giving names to your physical sensations. The pinching in your knee is called Gerald. The burning in your lower back, definitely Patricia. Their loud roommate, you didn't invite them, but they refuse to leave. Still, you persist. At some point around our 6, you hit what can only be described as the golden fog. Your body is vibrating slightly. You're not sure if you're meditating or dreaming with your eyes open. A senior monk walks past and gives you a subtle nod. You're not sure if it's approval or pity, but you'll take it. Historians have noted that these early training periods were oft and deliberately harsh, not out of cruelty, but because it was believed that mental clarity only emerged when the usual habits of body and mind were, how shall we say, thoroughly broken. Scholars still debate whether this approach was grounded in actual psychological insight or if it was just spiritual. But then again, have you ever tried staying awake for 48 hours straight while maintaining perfect posture? If nothing else, it's impressive. Eventually, dawn begins to creep through the rice minus paper windows, turning everything into shades of silver and soft blue. You made it, technically, sort of. You didn't fall over, and that a monk brings you a bowl of hot water. It's both a reward and a reminder the next night comes soon. But for now, there's warm rice pouring. You're beginning to notice a pattern of bells, water, cold air, and more bells. At first, it felt like chaos disguised, but now it's starting to feel like choreography, and forgiving choreography, like trying to perform Swan Lake in a straitjacket. Sleep deprivation. This morning's routine begins, as usual, with not the chilly breeze and sweater, weather kind of cold. No, this is splash your face with ice water and ask yourself why you're here cold. It hits your skin like a slap from a particularly judgmental cloud. The monks call it misochi, a kind of purification. You scoop water from the stone basin outside the meditation hall. 1, 2, 3 times over your face, your neck, the back of your head. It's not just for hygiene. It's to wake the soul, and also, perhaps, to ensure no one falls asleep mid-minus chant with a mouth full of porridge. After misochi, you head to the bell tower. It's not really a tower, more like a small raised platform with a massive wooden log suspended horizontally, ready to strike the equally massive bell that could probably be heard halfway down the mountain. You don't ring it today, that's a senior monk's job. But you stand nearby, watching as he pulls the rope. The log swings, the bell sings. The sound isn't sharp, it's deep, round, and slow. It pressurizes it. Your ribs vibrate, your spine straightens instinctively. The birds in the pine trees go respectfully quiet. The bell rings 1. That's the start of the chanting hour. It will ring again in 47 minutes. Precise. Why 47? No one knows. Or if they do, they're not telling the novice, who looks like a dehydrated mushroom. You shuffle into the chanting hall, where your vocal cords will now do the work your brain is too tired to manage. Chanting here isn't about it's about rhythm, breath, vibration. You follow the lead of a more seasoned monk beside you, mouthing syllables in a language older than your country-ass plumbing system. The sound becomes a rope, and you cling to it. Your thought, you just exist. Academics have long speculated whether this kind of repetition has meditative neurological effects or if it's just. Either way, your brain no longer cares. It's just grateful to not be in charge for a while. Somewhere in the middle of the 4th chant, your knees go numb. A small you no longer feel pain, you feel nothing, which is arguably closer to enlightenment than some. After chanting comes the mid-infulsens bellus oft ding to signal the transition to garden work. The moment it rings, the room doesn't explode into motion, it exhales into it. You move toward the courtyard. The sun is barely above the horizon. You grab a straw broom. It's not really for cleaning. It's for noticing each sweep a breath, each bristle a moment. And just like that, without meaning to, you're tired, sure. Your eyelids are heavier than the bell. But there's a strange, tingling awareness humming just under your... It's not energy, not clarity, but something that's very, very... And just when you feel like you might be touching something profound, a frog jumps across your foot and ruins it. You laugh quietly, because even here, in a temple designed to dismantle your ego, the universe still thinks you're funny. There's an art to staying awake while looking like you're having a transcendent spiritual experience. You are now officially trying to master. You sit perfectly still in the zendo, eyes open barely, you're staring at a blank wall. But in your peripheral vision, you can sense a dozen other monks doing the same. No one moves. The air hums with silence. Your brain, however, is doing anything but being silent. It starts innocent enough. You count your breath. You imagine waves. You focus on your posture. And then, somewhere between breath 27 and 28, you forget your EOWIT for exactly 0.7 seconds. You are fully asleep with your eyes open. A micro mine a snap. A stealth snooze. You don't fall forward. Your neck doesn't snap back. You simply vanish and then return, like someone lightly tapped the pause and play buttons on your consciousness. Welcome to the most common beginner skill in the monastery, nodding with. There's even a term the monks half-minus jokingly use in EM Yuri minus Zazen. Sleep minus sitting. It's not exactly encouraged. But let's just say everyone understands. You notice the guy next. His back is straight. His eyelids at that perfect 30%. He looks serene, peaceful, enlightened even. But you catch his toad, which in that unmistakable REM sleep flick, he is definitely dreaming about rice, or cloud minus shape trice. One of the senior monks walks past, holding the case Achu, the encouragements. You 10. He pauses behind someone to rose over. Light thwack. It's gentle, really. A whispered reminder with the volume turned up. Later, during a break, you overhear two older monks debating the ethic. It's not punishment. One says, chewing his pickled radish like it's a philosophical argument. No, says the other. But is it invitation or warning? Depends who's holding the stick. The first one shrugged. Scholars outside the temple have written entire papers on this. Some claim the case Achu is symbolic ale lineage to. Others insist it's just a socially acceptable way to say hey. You're drooling on the tatami mat. The academic world can't decide. Meanwhile, in the zendo, you decide to sit slightly straighter. You start developing a few tricks to stay alert. Pull your earlobe. Subtle and weirdly effective. Tap your thumb with your ring finger rhythmically. Meditation as hand. Think about cold noodles. Mildly distracting but delightful. And then there's the ultimate emergency incense breath. You inch a little closer to the stick of incense burning beside the altar. Not enough to seem obvious, but enough to catch that sharp tang of smoke in your nostrils. Instant wake minus up call. Historical cheat code. By the end of the session, you realize you've made it through an entire hour without fully blacking out. That counts. In monk terms, that's basically a gold medal. One monk pats you on the shoulder later. You didn't fall over today. He said, you beam. High praise, and the day winds down with another round of walking meditation. You step carefully, heel first, then toes, like you're tiptoeing across the surface of it. The sun set, the sky turns the color of soaked ink. And tonight, just maybe, you'll stay awake a little long. You know the day has begun when your stomach growls before the bell rings. That's new. This morning, you line up for breakfast, bowl in hand, like everyone else, but you've come to realize something. Food here isn't a reward. It's a lesson in patience, simplicity, and exactly how bland rice can taste if you're not paying attention. The meal is called shojiyen, or your a type of Buddhist vegetarian cuisine developed in temples over centuries. It's not meant to impress. It's meant to sustain and to humble. On the menu, a bowl of you rice porridge, some pickled daikon, and maybe if this you eat in silence. Seated on the floor, your eyes lowered as the head monk reads a meal verse. The verse is a reminder. This food is medicine. This meal is not for pleasure. This nourishment supports your practice, not your craving, which is monk minus speak for don't get too excited about. You bow, you eat slowly, and something strange happens. The longer you chew the same bite, the more it changes. The porridge starts round. The daikon crunches like it's narrating its own memoir. One of the monks tells you that every meal is Zay's unseated meditation. That's when you realize that hunger, like everything else here, is just another place where awareness is prepped. In the West, people sometimes call this mindful eating, but here it's not a trend. It's built into the schedule. The etiquette, the utensils. You clean your own bowl with a piece of pickled vegetable, swirling the last bits into a kind of edible rinse cycle, then drink it. That's dessert. Historians often point out how shoji-en are yuri evolved from both spiritual practice and practical limit. Monks culled and killed animals. Many temples were remote. Meals had to be simple, seasonal, and designed to prevent. Meat slows the mind, they said. Garlic heats the blood. And sugar? Well, it's not even on the radar. You finish your meal and wipe the bowl dry with a cloth tucked into your sleeve. You do it carefully, like it matters. With every object in the temple is treated like it has a tiny soul, or at least a serious sense of dignity. Then comes the post breakfast ritual. Samu is part of spiritual training. Today, you're assigned to the vegetable garden. You're handed a hoe that feels like it predates electricity, and pointed toward a row of weedy plots that somehow manage to look both peacefully and judgmental. As you dig, you sweat. Not aggressively, just gently, like your body is sighing from the inside up. A senior monk walks past and says, "You're not here to make vegetables. You're here to make awareness." Then he moves on before you can ask him what that ad. Later, another novice confesses, "Sometimes I dig faster so I can feel like I'm accomplishing something." You nod. You've done the same. But deep down, you know the goal isn't harvest, and that's the real genius of this place. Whether you're washing a parrot or reciting a sutra, you're asked to do it with your full attention. No music, no multitasking, no podcast, just you and the carrot. It's very intimate, so you finish your garden work with a little less hurry. You feel the soil under your nails. You straighten your back. You breathe. Lunch is. Your knees still hurt. You still haven't slept, but your stomach is full. Your mind is slightly quieter. Your bowl sparkling clean. By now, you've accepted that your butt is going to hurt forever. This morning you sit down in the zendo for another extended session of Zazen, and your cushion greets you like a FR enemy familiar. Silent, deeply judgmental. It's called a ZFU, and it's shaped like a modest beanbag crossed with a philosophical breath. You shift, you adjust. You think maybe if you sit just a little more forward. No, now your leg's asleep. Fantastic, but you're not supposed. Movement is a ripple in the pond. Movement means mind minus slip rhymes. So you try to endure. You become a mass. Then it happens, a senior monk hands you a mat. not much larger than a doormat, and tells you you'll be participating in a 7. You nod politely, as if this is completely fine and not at all alarming. It's called SES-shin, literally to touch the mind, but it might as well mean to push your spine into a new tax breath. For 7 days, you'll rise before dawn, chant, meditate for hours on end, eat in silence, and repeat. No phones, no book, no escape, just your breath and your thoughts, and your absolutely rebellious need. The monks set up the schedule like a low-key boot camp. Each day includes alternating periods of sitting and walking meditation, short rest breaks, no sleeping allowed, and ceremonial meal. By day 2, you've memorized the sound of every person's. You think this impossible. Then you think, wait, was that clarity? Then you think, no, that was just your brain misfiring from lack of REM. At one point, around hour 6 of day 3, something clicked. Your legs still ache, your spine hummed, but your mind is quiet, not in a dramatic, Enlightenment underball kind of way, just like static finally fading on an old radio. You start to see your thoughts come and go like what? Worry about tomorrow? Rain cloud, craving for miso soup? Passing break, existential dread? Oh hey, thunderstorm? And yet, you don't hold on, you don't resist, you don't chase, you just sit, and what? And sit. A monk beside you begins to quietly snore. No one wakes him. The silence absorbs the sound like a forest absorbs. Academics have long tried to quantify what happens during SES-shin. Does the brain enter a different state? Is there a measurable neurological shift? Some say yes, citing studies on theta waves and meditative attention. Others say no, but the monks, they feel, your teacher later says, stillness is not the absence of movement. It's the movement you stop fighting. You repeat that in your head like a mantra as your hips attempt a mutiny. And when night falls, you lie not in a bed, but on your ZFU. Still upright, leaning slightly against the wall, your eyes flutter shut for a moment. Technically forbidden, but you're pretty sure even the Buddha would allow a 3-minute power nod. When you open your eyes again, the candles burned down an inch, and the world feels just a little more still. Maybe you didn't achieve enlightenment today, but you didn't give up. And in this place, that counts for more than gold. At first, walking meditation sounds like a Isn't meditation about sitting still, emptying the mind, cross-legged serenity, and all that? But no, here, walking is just another form of sitting, except your legs are involved, and your sandals squeak, and the moss under your feet has opinions. This is Kinhin, and it's not a stroll, it's a ceremony. You begin at the edge of the courtyard. A long line of monks in single file, all facing the same direction, hands folded, eyes soft, feet quiet. Then the bell rings, a single chime that releases you forward. One step, stop, breathe out. Another step, repeat until your sense of urgency dissolves. You think you're doing it too slow. Then you realize that each movement is heel to toe, weight shifting like an invisible tide. You become acutely aware of your ankles in a way that's both profound and strangely irritating. Around you, the temple world continued. Leaves fall. A bird sings and forgets its lyrics halfway through. A breeze stirs the hem of your robe. You don't look at any of it, but you feel all of it. Like your skin has grown ears, the path winds around the main hall, into the small garden with the rakes, and an oddly triumphant truck. That garden has no label, no name, but you've come to think of it as the place where time because in that garden, 5 minutes feels like a day, and also like it never happened. Some historians argue that Kinhin was developed for practical reasons to keep monks from getting blood clots during long retreat. Others say it was a philosophical innovation meant to bring the insights of stillness into motion. Modern scholars, divided as always, one group insists it enhances spatial mindfulness. Another thinks it's just old minus fashioned leg strip. No one's winning the argument. But everyone agrees it's oddly effective at quieting the inner noise. You, meanwhile, are trying not to step on a caterpillar that seems weirdly interested. You sidestep it gently, breaking your rhythm, and wonder if that just earned you negative karma or bonus compassion points. The monk behind you doesn't flinch. His pace adjusts seamlessly. You're pretty sure HE's done this walk in his dreams. Eventually, the line curves back toward the Zendo, and the walking slows even further like molasses thinking about moving. You realize you're not just walk, you're listening to your own movement, to the gravel, to the not minus, quite minus silence between and maybe most importantly, you're not thinking about what comes next or what came before. You're just here. That's new. Later, after lunch, one of the older monks is beside you and says, "You walk like a question mark. Try walking like a comma tomorrow." You nod as if you understand. You don't? Not really. But the ideal and somewhere inside your ribs and settles in like a seat. And when dusk falls and the evening bell rings out across the hills, you're already halfway to your next. You've gone several days without a pillow, without coffee, without your phone, and somehow it's the lack of shampoo that finally breaks you. Okay, maybe not breaks you, but definitely rattles your modern sensibility. Tonight, as you sit in the communal washroom, really more of a roofed pavilion with bucket, time to clean up, Zen minus style. In some temples, monks shaved their heads entirely every 10, not for fashion, but to reduce vanity and distraction. But what most people don't know is that cleanliness was deeply symbolic, not just spirit. It kept fleas away and thoughts, supposedly a little clearer. You scoop cold water over your scalp, gasping, always again. Then you rub the mist, sort of. It's less foam, more moral lesson, but it gets the job done. Next to you, an older monk hums softly as he scrubs his arms with methodical grace. If you can't wash your body with attention, he says, you probably can't wash your... You nod, getting soap in your eye. Afterward, you pat yourself dry with... It takes approximately 6 years to feel dry, but no one's in a rush. You head back to the hallway where you hang your robe to air. Everything here has a rhythm, a place, even damp cloth. You're learning that the small things matter. How you feel, how you place your sandals, how you step into and out of a room. You've heard it said that Zen isn't in the big revelations, it's in how you partake. In the West, this gets romanticized into something called wabi minus sabi or minimalist. But here, it's not a style, it's just academic types sometimes debate whether the emphasis on bodily cleanliness was a response to Japan's humid climate or a direct inheritance from Chinese Chan Bu. Likely both, either way. It became part of Enlightenment culture, not because Enlightenment requires nice minus smelling feet, but because discipline in one realm echoes. You catch a glimpse of your own reflection in a polished copper basin, not exactly radiant, but clearer, calmer, slightly more symmetrical, probably just the lighting. Later, back in the Zendo, use it for evening meditation with wet hair and a cleaner soul, or at least a cleaner armpit, small wit. Someone sneezes, no one reacts, not even at wit. Sneezes, apparently are part of the, or at least not a big deal. You notice your robe smells faintly of cedar and cold stream water. Not a scent you wears cologne, but comforting nonetheless. You sit a little straighter. You're not enlightened, but you are unmistakably present. And fortnight that the candlelight flickers gently as you kneel before a low wooden table, brush in hand, ink pot at your side. Tonight, there's no chanting, no walking, no gardening, just you, a piece of rice paper, and a very deliberate attempt not to smudge any. Welcome to copying Sutras, or as the monks call it, shaky O. You dip the brush into the ink. It glides with the kind of resistance that lets you know this isn't just writing its etching time into silence. Your first stroke is shaky. The second wobbles a bit. By the third, your breathing has slowed, matching the rhythm of brush to paper. You're not writing from left to right, but top to bottom in measured vertical column, classical Chinese character. You don't understand half of them. Doesn't matter. Right now, it's about precision without perfection, and that is strangely liberating. There's a monk across from you who's already finished an entire page. You're still halfway through the first character. He doesn't look rushed, just practice, like the ink flows from his spine. The practice of shaky O dates back over 1,000 years. It began as a way to spread a Buddhist texts before printing was a thing, but it became a meditative rite, a devotional act, a slow conversation between hand and heart. Modern historians point out that during the Heian period, it was believed to bring merit, soothe grief, and oddly enough improve handwriting. Academic debates continue over whether it had any real cognitive benefit. You make another stroke. This one curves gently. You like it? The next one, a little crooked. You accept. Move on. This is the rhythm of shaky O, not erasing, not editing, just being present with the ink as it is. A drop of sweat threatens to fall onto your paper. You stop breathing for 2 seconds until it slides the other way. Crisis averted. Spiritual composure mostly intact. Behind you, the paper walls creak gently in the night breeze. Somewhere, pine trees' eyes, you imagine the Buddha, or at least a really patient librarian. Well, an older monk walks past, peeks over your shoulder, and says simply, ink is intention. You take that to mean stop gripping the brush like it owes you money. You loosen your hand. The next few characters come easier. You're not thinking anymore about what each line means. You're just watching the shapes appear. It feels like sculpting fog. Time blurs. When you finish your first full line, you bow to the paper. That's the rule. You don't admire your work. You don't judge it. You acknowledge it. Then you begin again. And here's the weird thing: despite your exhaustion, despite your unwashed hair, and the distinct lack of caffeine in your life, you feel oddly refreshed. Not energized, just clear, like someone rinsed your brain in cold mountain water and handed it back to you with a towel. You roll up your page carefully, like it's a sleeping animal, and set it aside. Your back cracks when your knees complain like overwork, but your mind it hums, like the ink, like the breeze, like the candle that has, while you weren't watching, burned down to its final end. At this point, no one asks how you're doing. They just glance at your posture and know. Are your shoulders drooping? Did your right eyelid flutter a bit during the third bell? Did your rice bowl hand tremble during lunch? Congratulations, you're entering what the monks call the test. It's not formal, no one announces it, but it's real, and it's sneaky. The signs subtle. Someone asks, are you tired? And it sounds like small talk, but here it's practically a spiritual alim or I. Another might say, your breath is quiet today, which could mean you're calm, or you're slowly dying inside. Either way, you nod and say something wise like, but inwardly you're feeling like a half-minus sentient steamed bun. Today, during sitting practice, you catch yourself doing something forbidden. You start making a mental to minus do lift. buy new sandals when I leave. Maybe a hot spring visit. Do frogs feel enlightened? Does my spine always click like this? You stop. You inhale. You forgive yourself. Then you forget what you were forgiving, and at breakfast, a monk drops his chopstick. No one reacts, not even a glance. You realize the greatest performance he resents stillness. It's the ability to not judge. That afternoon, while sweeping leaves in the courtyard, you hear a novice mutter under his breath, "I think my soul is exfoliating." You want to laugh, but your face forgot how. You just nod in solidarity. Historians have tried to document these cracks in monastic discipline, often drawing from temple diaries or training. Some accounts describe the moments of quiet breakdowns. Even humorous ones like the monk who fell asleep made minus bow and face minus planted into his head. Others mention subtle rebellion, walking to fast, blinking too often, enjoying tea a little too. Scholars argue whether these were tolerated or quietly correct. But one thing is clear, everyone gets. The older monks, they don't scope. They simply wait, like the mountain, like gravity. Once it's beside you as you rub your sore legs and says, when you stop trying to look away, real clarity begins. You stare at him. He stares at a rock. The rock, as usual, says nothing. That evening, you get a rare moment alone. Not truly alone, this is a temple. After all, but no one's watching you directly. You sit near the small KOI pond and watch the fish whirl in muddy gold spirals. You try to name your thoughts. Then you try letting them go and name. And for a fleeting moment, you feel something click. Not enlightenment, but something quieter, like a drawer that finally slides open after years of being stuck. You don't grab it, you don't frame it, you just let it be there, unwrapped, like steam rising from tea. Later that night, during final Zazen, your back hurt, or maybe your resistance to the pain has. Your still tired, still human, but something inside you has softened. You bow at the end of the session. This time, not out of habit, but from someplace a little deeper. You look up. The moon is full. She doesn't say a word, but just watching. Tonight, you're introduced to something truly humbling, the monastic sleep substitute. It's called a moku tebene wooden headdress, carved in a slight curve, maybe wide enough to cradle your skull. If you happen to be a particularly obedient coconut, your told you may recline for a brief rest. Not sleep, rest, there's a difference. The kind monks don't define, but somehow expect you to. The headdress is positioned on a mat in the corner of the meditation hall. You lie down on your side, knees drawn up slightly, hands folded like you're posing for a woodblock print of someone pretending not to cry. Your head lowers onto the moku to ban and instantly regret. It's not soft, not even politely hard. It's the kind of surface that says, you're welcome to rest. But enlightenment costs extra. The idea here isn't comfort, it's alignment. Your spine stays neutral. Your mind doesn't drift. Your body gets enough rest to avoid spontaneous combustion, but not enough to drift into REM bliss. You've heard rumors that monks of old used to tie their robes in such a way that if they nodded off too far, they'd instant self minus correct. One monk whispers. Some of the old scrolls show guys sleeping sitting straight up on a wooden plate. No pillow, no mat, just straight spine, calm breath, dreams optional. Academics have a field day with. Some suggest these methods were a response to the belief that dreams are distractions, attachments of the ego. Others claim it was just a practical solution. In cramped temples, the debate continued. Meanwhile, your neck is negotiating a truce with your shoulder. You don't, maybe, you're not sure. You blink once, then it's an hour later, or 3 minutes. You can't tell. Your dreams, if they exist, are the color of fogging, slightly smell like Andewald. The senior monk taps a bell and everyone rises. There's no announcement, no good morning, just the soft creak of floorboards and the almost comically silent shuffling of 50 people trying not to look like they have sore hip. You stand, your knees wobble, but you're upright. You look around. Everyone else looks the same, equally tired, equally serene, equally committed to not mentioning the fact that we all just napped on block. You return to your seat in the Zen. Candlelight flickered. The walls feel closer. Your breath feels slower. And then the head monk enters, smiling in that way that makes you immediately suspicious. He picks up his mokuji while the wooden fish Drummond begins a rhythmic chant that pulses through your chest like a heartbeat you didn't know you were borrowing. The words wash over you. You don't catch them all, but it doesn't matter. The meaning is in the rhythm, the gesture, the shared space. You feel the headrest imprint still on your neck, a physical reminder that rest doesn't always mean indulgence. Sometimes it just means not collapsing. You're tired, but and for now, that's enlightenment enough. Tonight, you learn what happens, not in a grim way. No exile, no thunderbolt from above, just quiet absence. You're sweeping the walkway near the bamboo grove when you notice a cushion missing from the Zen. A pair of sandals neatly tucked by the door, no robe on the usual hook. You ask a senior monk cautiously where's Sato. The monk shrugs gently. Aichi paused his training, he says, as if announcing that someone's taken a slightly longer lunch break. No judgment, no gossip, just air and fact. Later, in hushed conversation over rice and pickles, a novice whispers he went back to Kyoto. Says he'll try again next spring. You nod, silently grateful it's not you. Because the truth is, this path is not for everyone. It's not meant to be. Enlightenment isn't turned with willpower alone. And sleep deprivation isn't some mystical shortcut. It's a tool-in uncomfortable, sometimes unreasonable toolment to strip away layers until only what's real remains. Some find something sacred under those layers. Others find exhaustion and a really strong craving for miso ramen. Historians occasionally refer to the dropout phenomenon in temple life as Ensu, which literally means cloud and way of describing novices drifting between temples in search of the right place, or the right moment, or the right. It sounds romantic, but in practice, it often looks like someone packing their cloth bundle, bowing. You wonder if you'll make it. You think of your old bed, your phone, your socks that matched, the smell of toast, your grandma's cat, and then you sit and breathe and let the wave pass. There's no ceremony for no badge, no bonus round, but the monks who remain develop a look not smug, not even proud, just steady. Later, during walking meditation, a senior monk falls slightly out of step, just a heartbeat off it. No one says anything, but you feel it ripple through the line, then fade. Afterwards, he says to you, even the bell misses the mark sometimes, but it still rings. You remember this when, during evening Zazen, your mind wanders so far off course you almost invent a new language of frustration. You have return to the breath, return, return, return. That's the real training, not perfect discipline, but repetition without Scholars often overlook this part. They write about the rituals, the doctrines, the architect, but they rarely mention the quiet, personal negotiations each monk makes with their own limit. Not everyone stays. That's part of this. But you're still here, and the candle is still burning. You don't notice it at first. Just a slight change in the way one monk's lips curve at breath, a glimmer behind someone's eyes during a softness to the way a bowl is placed down, not clinked, but set like a thank minus you in physical. Then one evening, as you settle into your usual spot in the zendo, you glance at the monk beside you. His name's probably Hiroshi, or something close, and you realize Aichi is smiling. Not a full grin, not a smirk, just the barest upturn at the corners of the mouth. A peaceful, almost secret smile, as if someone just whispered a gentle joke to his bones. You wonder if a chi is sunlight. You wonder if this is what it looks like, not fireworks, but warm, not floating off the mat in a blaze of cosmic insight, but simply sitting with joy. Afterward, as you walk back to the dormitory area, you gather the courage to did you see some? He pauses, looks, then shrugs, smiling again. Nothing I didn't already know. Cryptic, infuriating, completely on brand. The next morning, during garden duty, he hums as he waters the spinach. It's not a hymn, just a tune, old maybe made up. The kind you hum when you're not trying to fill silence, just you're tempted to ask again. But you stop yourself. Instead you watch, you listen, you try to see what some monks call this state kin, shot he first glimpse of one's true need, not the final destination, just a window opening. I breeze through the ego. It doesn't come on command. It doesn't announce itself. But when it happens, it leaves traces lighter steps, quiet arise, more patience with an even porridge. Of course, not all scholars agree. Some insist that smiles like that are just emotional rebound, a side effect of enduring discomfort for weeks. One researcher even suggested it was the equivalent of spiritual Stockholm syndrome. That guy, it's worth noting, has never held a broom for 10 hours straight, but here in the rhythm of real practice, you start to believe it's something else, something earned, but not achieved. Something that arrives when you're too tired to chase it. That evening, as you bow before your cushion, something odd happens your mind doesn't resist. Your knees bend without argument. Your spine straightens without grumbling. Your breath finds you, not the other way around. And in the space between two bells, you realize you're okay. Not amazing, not radiant, not levitating or transcending or drafting a memoir about your transformation. Just okay. There is peace in that. You don't smile. Not yet. But your face forgets how to frown. And somewhere behind you, the monk with the secret smile pours tea for someone who forgot they needed it. It begins with a kettle. You're sitting in the temple's small tea room, legs folded beneath you, as steam curls gently from a cast iron spout. A senior monk, one who rarely speaks and always seems to arrive without footsteps, prepares. You're leaving tomorrow. Your training period is complete. Or pud, or just transitioning into something else. No one here says things like graduation or the end. They simply offer you tea and a place to sit. The monk ladles hot water into a small bowl. He adds a pinch of roasted tea leaf shoji cha, which smell like caramelized. He stirs one, waits, hands the bowl to you with two hands, and a bow so subtle you almost miss it. You take the bowl. It is warm, it is quiet. It is everything this temple has taught you distilled into one moment. You sip. It tastes like with smoke and soft ending. You remember the first night you arrived. How strange everything felt. How hard the cushions were. How rude the water was. How impossible it. Now, those same things feel kind, familiar, necessary. You've walked these paths half minus asleep and fully awake. You've argued with your spine. You've lost track of time and found it again in your breath. You've watched people arrive, disappear, reappear. You've failed, reset, and failed better. No one claps for you. There's no certificate, no enlightenment badge, no secret mantra revealed at the end of the final. Just tea and silent, and finally rest. One monk may be the same one who used to hum during morning sweepings. It's beside. He doesn't speak for a long time. Then, with the casual grace of someone folding a napkin, he says, "You don't take the temple with. You take the part of you that met the temple." You smile, a real one, not because you figured everything out, but because you finally stopped trying outside. The wind moves through the trees with the elegance of someone who doesn't need to prove they exist. Somewhere in the distance, the temple bell rings once. It's not for you, but it still feels like a goodbye. You pack your, which is to say, you fold your robe and tuck your cushion under your arm. Someone hands you an apple. You nod. Everything here is a gesture. You step through the temple gate for the last time, and the world outside smells louder, looks busier, but you walk through it the same way you walked around the meditation halls. You're no longer a novice monk. You're not quite any, and that's exactly right. You bow once to no one in particular, just to the air. Then you keep walking, and now you're no longer walking. You're resting, somewhere in your room or your bed, or maybe on the couch, because the bed felt too decisive. You're lying still. Eyes half mine is closed, brain wrapped in the soft gauze of that mountain temple. It's far away now, or maybe echoing in the background hum of the silence between streetles, the rhythm of your own breath. You feel the memory of wooden floors beneath the weight of a bowl in your hand, the faint scent of roast. Doesn't matter. What matters is that, just like the monks who smiled without reason, you've made it here, to this moment without fixing, without needing to understand. Sometimes clarity doesn't arrive like lightning. Sometimes it's just a gentle sense that you can finally let go. So go ahead, sink deeper into the quiet. Let the thoughts dissolve like incense smoke curling toward the ceiling. Let the stillness find you, as it always does when you stop chasing it. You're already dreaming. And from this little corner of the world to yours,